Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Jo Larson, publisher of Franchise Times, and I would like to thank you for joining us for Franchise Times Prime Time. We are so glad you are here with us today. The purpose of Prime Time is to give executives of franchise brands an opportunity to present their concept to you, our audience. They will reveal their company's outlook, expansion plans, and business case. It really is a wonderful opportunity to learn each month about the brands and get the inside story on franchising. We are very pleased to have the following brands presenting today: Play It Again Sports, Hotworks, and Franchise Group, Inc. And just as a reminder, reach out and contact these brands if you like their presentation. I would also like to give a big shout out to Tenet Financial and Plant Moran, our sponsors for our primetime episode today. Thank you to them for their support. If you would like to learn more about them, please click the banner ad at the bottom of the page. And before we get started, I do want to go over a couple of notes that will help you get the most out of the presentations today. Throughout the presentations, we encourage you to submit questions, which you may do by clicking to the right of the video feed. If the presenter does not get to your question, we will give them your contact details to follow up after the event. To learn more about our speakers, please visit the speaker tab at the right of your video feed. So each month at the beginning of the episode of Prime Time, we will interview an expert in the franchise community to give their update on the issues and trends they are seeing. As promised, each month in every episode of Franchise Times Prime Time, we have someone join us of note in the franchise sector who gives us a little information about what's going on out there. And today we are very pleased to have with us Franchise Times' very own reporter, Callie Evergreen. Callie, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm doing really well. Yeah,
great.
How about you?
Great. I'm doing great. We would love to hear, first of all, what's going on in the current issue of Franchise Times. What can we read?
Yeah, so May issue hit the stacks, and our senior editor, Beth Ewan, wrote a beautiful cover story all about focus brands and what they're doing, what the chefs are doing to drive culinary innovation at their brands: Jamba, Auntie Anne's, Cinnabon, McAllister's Deli, all that great stuff. And then she also wrote a really fun human element column on executives from Cycle Bar, Modern Market Eatery, Painting with a Twist, just kind of talking about pandemic culture, how it's changed from, wardrobe to what they're looking forward to doing, once it's safe. And so then our restaurants editor, Nicholas Upton, wrote a really interesting piece on, kind of virtual restaurants, that trend, and where it's going to be going from here. So look for that. And then I wrote a story about new age wellness brands that are doing these really funky, like IV vitamin drip therapies and cryotherapy facials called like the Cryo Queen at Face Foundry. And so there's a lot of great stuff in there.
As we know, you can franchise anything. So that's pretty amazing.
Yes.
It sounds like a lot of fun, actually. So are you working on any bigger projects coming up?
Yeah. So I recently went on a reporting trip to Atlanta, Georgia, where I got to meet and interview Devon Reeves and Jessica Myers, who they were both 33 years old when they acquired a home 2 suites by Hilton in Oklahoma. And it actually made them the youngest Black women to ever co-own a property of such a major hotel chain. And so, Devon Reeves, she actually got her start in the hotel industry as a front desk agent for the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. And she told me, I met a lot of hotel owners in my day, but I never met any who looked like me. And so, their story I kind of weaved into this larger piece on just the franchising industry broadly, how they're tackling diversity and inclusion, and kind of the change makers who are pushing that needle forward. And so, I talked with either the Multicultural Food Service and Hospitality Alliance. They partnered up with PepsiCo and a Los Angeles firm called Fourth Movement, and they created a Pathways to Black franchise ownership program. And it's this kind of development training initiative with the goal to create 100 Black-owned franchisee restaurants by the end of 2022. And so I spoke with Jerry Fernandez, the founder and president of the MFHA, plus CEO and Buffalo Wild Wings franchisee Kareem Webb, who's the CEO of Fourth Movement, all about that program, what that will look like. And one thing that I noticed when doing this research and when talking with my various sources was, though there are stats like, less than 1% of hotels are owned by Black women, only 8% of restaurants are currently owned by Black people, there is this stark lack of statistics and data on franchisee specific representation and diversity. Which those stats are needed to measure any kind of progress. And so what the International Franchise Association is doing, they recently just launched their franchise census. And so they're going to be collecting more statistics on diversity within their member companies. And so that's really great to hear.
Sounds like that's much needed.
Definitely.
And it sounds like you did a lot of work on this feature.
Yes, definitely the longest I've ever worked on a story before. So that will be coming out in our June-July issue, which will hit the stacks in next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
online.
Are you, can you give us anything else of note in the issue that you want to chat about?
Definitely, yeah. So I also wrote the Human Element column for June-July. And the Human Element is, it's a standing feature in each issue. It's HR focused. And so this month I wrote about kind of millennial minded benefits. And so telehealth was obviously one of, the biggest benefits that companies implemented in 2020 with the pandemic. And so I spoke with Kevin Dunn, the CEO of Decisely, which kind of helps large groups of franchisees and associations to customize benefits for their employees. I also spoke with the co-founders of Boomo, which is this co-working space with integrated childcare. They kind of morphed into a virtual classroom preschool during COVID-19 to help meet the needs of parents working from home while also kind of homeschooling, and their kids need that, what they call healthy screen time and enrichment. And so it just explores kind of how employers, both franchisors and franchisees, what they should be thinking about in terms of future benefits. Yeah, and I also wrote a story about retail brands who pivoted to e-commerce during the pandemic and spoke with franchisees from, Monkey's Boutique, Clothes Mentor, also the founders of resale franchises, The Closet Trading Company, and Uptown Cheapskate. And so we talked about just the uptick, in thrifting and resale and the continued desire from consumers, especially the younger generation, for that more eco-friendly, sustainable branding. So that was super interesting.
It's interesting too. We can all look at our own closets and maybe see some dollar signs in there too.
Exactly.
When we're starting to look at changing our wardrobe a little bit. So tell me a little bit about the deal makers. Now you and senior editor Beth Ewan work on that every month, and you get that newsletter out. Plus we had that Deal Makers, Franchise Times Deal Makers Week in April, and it's all about M&A in the franchise sector. What are you seeing out there in that genre right now?
Yeah, definitely. So there was definitely a flood of mergers and acquisitions at the end of 2020. We, for example, had more than a dozen deals in our December Dealmakers e-newsletter. And then there was a little bit of a slowdown once all of those deals hit. We didn't see quite as many at the start of 2021, but we started to see that kind of pick back up. And so per our latest newsletter, which came out, May 11th, we saw private equity firm, the Riverside Co., launch Threshold Brands as an umbrella company for the 5 trade services franchisors that they acquired over the past 8 months. And that includes brands such as, Made Pro, Flyfo, Men and Kilts, Pestmaster, and then another private equity firm, New Spring Capital. It's based in Philadelphia. They acquired a really tasty franchise called Duck Donuts. And then we also saw, Fast Signs and Nerds to Go. They have a new parent company called Propelled Brands. It's led by Catherine Monson, the chair of the IFA. And so, quick plug, to stay caught up with, M&A in the franchise industry, you can subscribe on our website if you aren't already to receive these newsletters.
And you should, to stay up on all of that. I do have to go back to Men and Kilts.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners, what is Men and Kilts?
It's exactly what it sounds like.
It's Men and Kilts. What do they do in their kilts? They clean windows, I think, right?
I think so. Yeah. That sounds right.
Yeah. So that's a fun one. And there are so many fun ones like that in franchising. So you've been with us for over a year now, and you got to join us, and then COVID hit.
Yes.
So what has your experience been like working in the franchise sector and just, reporting on it? What are you seeing out there, and what have you enjoyed so far about all of this?
Definitely. So, my background was reporting, just general assignment stories for local newspapers in the Twin Cities where I'm from, and also in, Naples, Florida. And most recently, I was writing content for Delta Airlines' former in-flight magazine, Sky, and, United Healthcare's Renew magazine for, 65 plus people. And so when I first started reporting, on the franchising industry here, I was just surprised by the variety in the franchising space, which meant I got to report on a variety of topics and speak with, CEOs of top brands to first-time business owners. I was also pleasantly surprised just, how welcoming everyone was. Those CEOs that I spoke with when I was first kind of learning everything, they were so willing to just, take me through behind the scenes, talk me through what was going on. I could ask questions and not feel like I was the newbie that I was,
Right.
Right. Everyone has just been so kind here and in the franchising space in general. It really, I always heard the talk, franchisors would talk about it's family oriented and all of that, and you do feel that.
Right. I feel like there's a lot of sharing between brands too. So when different franchisor executives are out there at different events, they are willing to share best practices. So it's really nice that they were also willing to share with you too. That's great.
Definitely.
What are some of your favorite projects you've worked on? Maybe some stories that you've covered?
Yeah. So I started right out of the gate reporting for our Zora Awards for our March 2020 magazine last year. And so that was a super fun one to work on just because of all of the research that goes on behind the scenes for Zora Awards. I mean, we analyzed these item 19s from our Franchise Times Top 200 Plus database. And so, we look at, financial metrics, ROIs, even down to Googling, the latest news from those companies, making sure that, CEOs aren't doing shady things behind the scenes. We do a lot of research and kind of narrow down brands to, come up with what are some of the top brands for first-time prospective franchisees to maybe invest in. And so then after that, we interview franchisees from those winning brands to hear, the lessons they've learned and advice that they would pass on.
Right.
And so I got to speak with a United States Air Force veteran, Ophelia Lucas, about her Paul Davis Restoration franchise, as well as Pile Nunley, who spent 18 years working as an engineer in the oil fields before realizing that he wanted to do something with a little bit more purpose.
Right.
And so my favorite part about this job is just getting to speak with these super passionate entrepreneurs who truly, so many of them want to make their communities better places to live in and help people. And that passion is just contagious.
Right. And that is something that I think all of us here share at Franchise Times when we're reporting is entrepreneurs are fascinating and fun to interview. They're just great people and just have wonderful stories to tell. Well, we really appreciate you being with us today, Callie, and as part of our Franchise Times team. So I'm sure you'll see Callie out there more when things open up and we're going to different events. Make sure you stop her in the hallway and say hi. So when you're out there. So thank you, Callie. We really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.